Book bag? Book bag.
Hey.
What you want to say about the baby?
Jetta, baby.
I will not refer to them as mom and dad or mother or father. They don't deserve that title.
We are starting with continuous coverage of Javeayah Harris. The Aiken County Sheriff now says they believe the human remains discovered over in Fairfield County are 4-year-old Javeayah.
And you just heard from the sheriff there. Investigators also say they found those remains near Cedar Creek Reservoir, which is more than 100 miles away from the child's home in Aiken County.
A 4-year-old girl was already dead for a month before her own mother picked up the phone and reported her missing. Think about that for a second. For 30 days, this woman went about her life, knowing exactly where her daughter was, knowing exactly what happened to her, while everyone else believed a 4-year-old was simply gone, maybe wandered off, maybe taken. And when she finally did call 911, she didn't confess. She performed. She cried. She described pink Minnie Mouse pajamas and pink beads in her hair. She said the words every parent's worst nightmare is made of. I can't find my baby. And investigators now believe every single word of that call was a lie.
Aiken County 911, where's your emergency?
Ma'am, I'm at 39 Hillsborough Street. I can't find my baby.
39 Hillsborough Street?
Yes, ma'am. She was outside playing, and I came out here after cooking dinner a little bit, and I'm looking for her, but I don't see her nowhere.
Built on top of a body that had already been destroyed with chemicals and poured into a lake. Before we go further into this, I need to ask you for something small. If stories like this affect you the way they affect me, hit subscribe and tap that bell. This isn't just about growing a channel. Every time one of these videos gets buried by the algorithm, it's a little girl's story that doesn't get told, a pattern of abuse that doesn't get recognized in time for the next child. Comment sections on cases like this have led to tips to renewed attention, to people recognizing warning signs in their own lives. Liking and subscribing costs you nothing, but it's how we keep these stories from disappearing the way Javeayah almost did. So if you're with me, let's get into it. Her name was Javeayah Harris. She was 4 years old, and by every account from the community that knew her, she was sharp, talkative, the kind of kid who could hold a full conversation with an adult, who noticed things, who had a personality already fully formed at 4, which is exactly the age when kids start becoming people in the eyes of everyone around them instead of just babies. She lived on Hillsborough Street in Aiken, South Carolina, with her mother, Michelle Herring, who was 22, and her father, Javeayah Harris, 23. Herring was 39 weeks pregnant with the couple's second child when Javeayah disappeared. Think about that timeline for a second, because it matters. A newborn was days away from arriving into that same house. On the surface, this looked like a young family. 2 parents, a preschooler, a baby on the way. But underneath the surface, something had already gone wrong weeks earlier. And to understand how, we have to talk about what psychologists call concealment phase of family violence. This is a period after something catastrophic has already happened, where the people responsible aren't dealing with grief or panic in any normal sense. They're managing information. They're managing what other people know. And that requires a very specific, very cold kind of composure. According to arrest warrants, Javeayah suffered a head injury from physical abuse at the hands of her mother, and neither parent sought medical attention for her afterward. Let that sink in on its own for a moment, separate from everything else. A child was hurt badly enough to die from it, and the response from the 2 adults responsible for her wasn't a call for help. It was to not call for help. In cases of fatal child abuse, this is one of the most consistent and chilling patterns researchers point to. The failure to seek medical care isn't just neglect in the moment. It's often the first calculated decision in a chain of decisions meant to protect the abuser rather than the child. Once that first choice is made, the ones that follow tend to escalate in the same direction. Warrants state Javeayah died around June 8th. She wasn't reported missing until June 30th. That's over 3 weeks where, as far as the outside world knew, nothing was wrong. Neighbors didn't know. Extended family didn't know. For 3 weeks, Her parents lived inside a secret that size, in a house that was about to welcome a new baby, and somehow maintained enough normal behavior that nobody around them suspected anything catastrophic had happened. This is where the psychology gets genuinely disturbing, because most people assume that kind of secret would be impossible to carry. That guilt, fear, grief, something would leak out. And in this case, it seems like it may have, just not in the way you'd expect. Screenshots that reportedly surfaced online, said to be shared by Javeayah's uncle, a man known as Junebug, appear to show text conversations with Herring from May, weeks before the 911 call. I want to be clear that law enforcement has not confirmed these messages are authentic, and they haven't said whether these texts are part of the official investigation. So we're going to treat this as an unverified account, not a fact, but it's worth walking through because of what it illustrates about behavior under pressure. According to those screenshots, the uncle never brought up Javeayah on his own. When he directly asked Herring about her, she reportedly didn't answer the question. Instead, after he sent her a photo of some groundwork he was doing, she pivoted the conversation to making plans, talking about going fishing together sometime, talking about double dates. Normal, warm, forward-looking conversation. If this account is accurate, what you're looking at is a textbook avoidance pattern, not panic, not slipping up. A redirection so smooth that a family member noticed something was off about the silence around one specific topic, but had no way of knowing what that silence was actually hiding. Psychologically, this kind of compartmentalization is what allows people to function normally while sitting on something monstrous. It's not that the guilt isn't there. It's that the mind creates a wall around it, and everyday life gets to continue on the other side of that wall almost undisturbed, making weekend plans, talking about fishing trips. It's the same capacity that lets people smile at work today after committing something unthinkable at home. Then came the phone call. Herring dialed 911 just before 9 at night, telling dispatchers her daughter had been outside playing and vanished while she was cooking dinner. She described what Javeayah was wearing in detail. Pink Minnie Mouse pajamas, pink beads in her braids. When asked if Javeayah had any health issues, Herring brought up autism, though the child had no formal diagnosis. She said Javeayah was smart, that she could carry a full conversation, that she just didn't quite seem herself lately. Listen to how specific and sensory that description is. The pajamas, the beads, that's not the vague panic of someone in true crisis. That's someone constructing a scene, giving searchers something vivid to look for, something that makes the story land emotionally. It worked. It triggered a massive search involving local, state, and federal agencies. Volunteers combed the area. A local restaurant owner cooked and delivered 60 meals to search crews. A community that had never met this child rallied entirely around finding her, while investigators now believe the mother telling them where to look already knew there was nothing left to find. For days, the search continued as a missing child case, and then it turned. Investigators announced they no longer believed Javeayah was missing. They believed she was dead and had been for roughly a month. Herring and Harris were arrested. Both were charged with murder, homicide by child abuse. Herring alone was additionally charged with filing a false police report because on top of everything else, that 911 call, every detail of it, was built on a lie investigators say she had been living inside for 3 weeks. At their first court appearances, both parents were denied bond. The homicide charges are serious enough that only a circuit court judge can rule on bond for those, and that hearing hasn't happened yet. Harris told the judge he worked for DHL Bridgestone, but didn't know how much he earned in a week. A strange, almost disconnected detail to offer in a moment that serious. Neither parent qualified for a court-appointed attorney. Their next court date is in September. If convicted, they're each looking at 20 years to life. But the true horror of this case isn't just that Javeayah died and her death was hidden. It's what came next, because concealing a death and destroying a body are two very different levels of psychological commitment. According to Sheriff Marty Sawyer, extensive and deliberate efforts were made to destroy and conceal evidence after Javeayah died. Corrosive chemicals and other tools were used to accelerate the destruction of her remains. Afterward, what was left was poured into a reservoir in Fairfield County, near an area locals call Stumpy Pond, full of underwater stumps and trees, difficult to search, difficult to navigate. Sawyer, a man with 37 years in law enforcement, said on camera that he had never heard of anything so horrific in his entire career. He said he would not refer to the people responsible as mother and father. Investigators now believe it's unlikely all of Javeayah's remains will ever be recovered, sit with the level of planning that requires. This isn't a panic cover-up where someone hides a body and hopes it isn't found. This is someone sourcing chemicals capable of breaking down human remains, using them deliberately, and then disposing of what's left in a body of water specifically known for being hard to search. Every step of that process requires the abuser to keep thinking clearly, keep problem-solving, while somehow also functioning well enough in daily life that a pregnant woman weeks from giving birth, and a father who still had to show up for work, didn't raise a single alarm among people who saw them regularly. This is a part of criminal psychology that's genuinely hard to sit with, because it forces us to accept that monstrous actions and completely mundane, functional behavior can exist in the exact same person at the exact same time. We want there to be a visible break, some moment where the mask clearly slips. But in cases like this, often there isn't one, not until investigators go looking specifically for cracks. Javeayah's newborn sister was born into this. She's now in the custody of her paternal grandmother, growing up without the sister she never got the chance to know, and starting life shaped entirely by a tragedy she has no memory of living through. The community held a candlelight vigil. People brought their own candles, balloons, stuffed animals, and stood together for a 4-year-old most of them had never met in person, but felt they owed something to anyway. So here's what I want you to sit with. What does it take, psychologically, for a parent to go from causing a fatal injury to standing in front of community and a search team, describing her daughter's pajamas in loving detail, to going home each night for 3 weeks knowing exactly what had happened? Is that cold, deliberate calculation, or is it a mind protecting itself from a reality it can't process, building a wall so effective that even the person behind it starts to function normally on the other side? And if a family member really was met with silence every time he brought up this child, what does it tell us about how isolated warning signs can be scattered across people who each only see one small piece, none of them enough on their own to raise a real alarm? I want to know what you think drove this. Was this always going to end in violence? Or did one moment, one injury, one decision not to call for help spiral into something neither of them could undo? Drop your theory in the comments. Tell me what part of this case unsettles you the most. And if you want more cases like this, ones that go beneath the headlines and into the psychology of why people do the unthinkable, subscribe to Psychology of Crime and stay close, because we're not done asking these questions.